What's up, guys? What's going on? I'm Paul. This is Pauline Theology's daily devotional, and we're going through the book of John. We are reading and understanding and knowing a little bit more about Jesus every day. That's what we want to do here. We want to trust in Jesus more, and we do that by trying to survey the scriptures every day, just ruminating on them, seeing what they have to say, how they speak to us. And we do that here with 4 questions. The first question that we ask is like, what is actually happening in the scriptures? What's going on? What's occurring in the narrative? And then next we ask the question, after understanding what's going on and seeing what's happening, we say, well, how does this display God's character? What do we see about God through these scriptures? And then after finding that, then we see what it is do we see about ourselves or mankind as a whole, as Christians or as non-believers. Like, how do this scripture showcase the idea of man? And then finally we say, how do we apply these truths to our lives after understanding who God is and who man is? And then how do we apply the truths to our lives so that we might live closer and look more like Jesus? And we're going to do that today. So if you haven't checked it out yet, go ahead and stop the tape and read John chapter 13, 3 through 5. If you have, well, we're going to dive into these questions. And the first question is, what's going on? And we know that this is the final farewell speaking with Jesus, and we just really kind of setting up what he's about to say. And Jesus is about to do something spectacular. He's about to do something insane to the disciples. And we're going to see how this is supposed to be an example for us as well. So Jesus, it's not even after, it's during the middle of this supper that they're eating together, says that he gets up, he stands up, and he removes his clothes, and he places on what I've heard is termed as like a loincloth. And so what that's displaying is that Jesus taking off his clothes and putting on the garbs of a slave. And then not only putting on the garbs of the slave, but it says then he begins to wash the disciples' feet. And if you've been listening to this podcast, we've talked about feet a couple of times, and the disdain that the Hebrew people have for washing feet. That even if it was a Hebrew slave, that he was not allowed to wash the feet. It was reserved for other slaves, because of the disgust that comes with washing feet. And we've seen examples too of how that disgust is displayed towards Jesus. John the Baptizer, the one who was a precursor to Jesus coming, said that he was not even fit to tie the thong or the strap on Jesus' sandals, saying that he wasn't even fit as a slave to be able to touch Jesus' feet. And so we see the chasm between the greatness of who Jesus is and John. And John was a great man, a prophet, one that Jesus says that there was no one greater born of woman than John. And so John saying that he's not even worthy enough to touch the feet of Jesus is saying something incredible, because the idea of touching someone's feet is so grotesque that it says that is a task that is not even fitting for a Hebrew. Yet John says, as a Hebrew, that it isn't even fitting for him to do, not because of the task of the foot, but because of the perspective that he has in comparison to Jesus. And then now we see Jesus is about to do this. Jesus is about to wash the feet. So something that is so insane to say that Jesus is in another category of greatness, then he does something crazy by putting himself in another category of lowliness. Jesus puts himself in the position of a slave, lower actually than a slave for the Hebrew people, because they don't do that. Jesus does this. What is this supposed to do? What is this supposed to say? What is this supposed to display? Because it starts out by saying, having known that God had given all things to him that he had placed all things into his hands. So Jesus is doing this. He is releasing or becoming a slave to his disciples, knowing, recognizing and understanding that he has been given everything by the Father. Everything. So he understands his position. He recognizes his position, and now he's finna give it up. Man, what is this saying then? What is this speaking about the nature of who Jesus is? That's the question now. The second question is, what is this saying about God? What is this saying about Jesus? It says that he is the humble servant king. That Jesus is the most humblest person in the world. That he has taken off his robe. There's a scripture in Philippians that Paul writes, and he says that he didn't grasp equality with God. He didn't consider that, but he left himself, released himself. And what this means is that he didn't consider that the honor and glory that he deserves for being the Son. He did not see that as something to be valued, because what he wanted was for us to find reconciliation. And so what he does is he takes this position of humility, takes this position, what Paul says, humble even to death, and death on the cross, which is a torturous death. And so this foot washing that Jesus does is what we call an enacted parable. I know I've talked about this time and time again, but it's that Jesus actually does something to display a concept that we need to learn. And he displays a concept. He does this to display an understanding that we need to see. An understanding that we need to see is that though Jesus, being full of glory, came and was stripped of that glory willingly. It was not forced upon him. He did this upon his own accord. And he does this so that we might be united with him. We're going to see later on kind of more of what this foot washing has to entail, because it has so many ramifications, so many symbols, and so much significance. But this is the first significance that we see, is that Jesus would relinquish his, not that he would relinquish his glory, because he he was always going to be glorified. He is the image of the glory of God. But what happened is that he would not have it be recognized upon him by his own people, so that we might be saved. That's what it says about God. That's what it says about Jesus. He is the humble servant king. What does this say about mankind? Well, when I say it's an acted parable, there's also other things that happen, is that he's displaying and showing humility. And he says later on that we're going to read that this is how we should do. And so what's this saying about man is that Christians in our lives, being Christ-like, living a life that is to display the glory of Christ, should be humble ourselves. We should be humble servants of the King, humble servants in the kingdom, showing humility to everyone. To everyone. How can we apply these truths to our lives? Well, where are you at? What are you doing? How you living? Where can you show humility? Where can you show service? Where can you display a servant's heart today? I appreciate you guys for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.